Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. Hey, Summit host, Dr. Mark T. Wade here, founder of Virtual Summit Software. And we're going to be talking about how a top email marketing company is leading the way through hosting a one-day summit. I've got legendary Brandon Olson here with me, marketing communications manager for Aweber, who's helping small business owners accelerate their growth using powerfully simple email marketing tools. Brandon, we are so fortunate, and I am extremely excited to have you here with us on the show.
Thanks, Mark. I'm pumped to be here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I cannot wait to dig into what you and Aweber has been doing with this one-day summit. Now, before we do that, though, why don't you just tell our audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in PR and communications, social media. I've been doing that for the past 14, 15 years, and I've touched a lot of different areas of marketing. So I have a pretty good breadth of knowledge on what marketing is and the various things you can do with it. But for Aweber, I head up our social media and our PR efforts. So I'm out there at events, promoting us on social media, getting the team involved. So I do a lot of sort of awareness, building awareness for the brand and what we do, as well as kind of engaging the not only our audience, but our team to really also kind of empower them to do the same thing.
Which I find absolutely fascinating, especially, the fact that you were able to take this idea, kind of put it out there, and then they just let you kind of roll with it. And we're gonna jump into that. Actually, let's go ahead and go with that right now. Why don't you tell our summit hosts a little bit about the summit you put on and kind of how you came up with the idea, how you got to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So the summit we have is called the Beyond the Podcast Virtual Summit. We're actually in our second year, so it's going to be next week, September 18th. I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but September 18th. So if you catch it, but we'll also be having it on recorded. So if you do catch it later on, you can still sign up, get the recordings. But the whole premise of Beyond the Podcast Summit is really to allow to empower podcasters to grow, monetize, and connect with their listeners. We've been in the podcasting space, really active in that community for a long, long time, probably 5 or 6 years now. And the thing we hear over and over and over again is that podcasters are struggling to understand how they can grow and connect with their audiences more and really monetize or build revenue around their podcasts. And so that's the whole goal of this summit, Beyond the Podcast Summit, is to teach them how to go beyond the podcast, to grow, to monetize, and to really connect on a deeper level with their listeners. So we started it last year, right before Podcast Movement, which is one of the world's largest podcast conferences out there. And we did it sort of as a way to kind of springboard us into the conference to really create some dialogue and some buzz and some conversations at the event. And it worked really, really well. I mean, people at the event were talking about the summit, like, oh, you guys hosted that summit. That was really cool. So it gave us a lot of opportunities to have conversations with people. But the other thing that we kind of didn't really expect is that, it generated a really great audience of podcasters who we could go back to, who we can continue to educate and engage with podcast specific content. And so going into the summit this year, we decided, well, let's take a little different approach here. We're obviously Podcast Movement's already passed. So what's our goal with our objectives with this summit, this year's summit? We thought, is it really to build thought leadership, authority in the space? Is it to drive sales or leads for us? So we really took a different approach there. Last year we ended up with about 2,000 registrants, and so this year we're really going after a larger group of podcasters as well, and we're taking a different approach where we're going to be tying it closer into our business goals. So obviously our business goals is to get people to try our software to really use email marketing, specifically podcasters. And so the summit's going to talk about a lot of different ways that you can grow and monetize your podcast. One of those obviously being email marketing. And we teach that, some of the best and most successful podcasters out there are the ones who are leveraging email marketing in their business. So, we are making a closer tie to our product and our service and what we do for podcasters throughout the summit and also afterwards. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to do the summit, which is about a 4-hour summit with 6 speakers. But after the conference, we're going to be holding sort of an encore webinar where we're going to invite people back to learn how they can do a lot of the things that they heard in the summit, how they can leverage email marketing to really grow and monetize. So that's where we're going to be talking more about our product, how they can use it to grow. And so, we're hoping that has a stronger tie to kind of what we do as a company.
Virtual Summit's software makes hosting a summit easier than ever. The only software in the world designed specifically for hosting a summit lets you set up a summit in a matter of hours with no tech skill or team needed. You can try out the Virtual Summit's software free at virtualsummits.com. But hurry, this is a limited offer.
I love that. Having an interactive component afterwards at the end, it increases the engagement and then also gives them what we kind of call like an edutainment. It allows them to actually be a participant versus just a passive viewer. So I really like that. So I've got some questions. I've been over here writing down questions, popping up, all kinds of things I want to kind of dig into. So first off, like I love the fact, obviously, that you and Aweber ran a one-day summit. I'm a big proponent of the one-day summit. We created that around 7 years ago. I'd love to know why you decided to do a one-day summit over, for example, a multi-day summit.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we did ask ourselves that. I mean, initially it was really, okay, we've got a lot of other projects and things going on. What could we do? So I thought, well, we could easily do sort of a one-day, and at the time, last year's was only 4 speakers. So it really wasn't a real heavy lift. At least we didn't think it would be. There was a lot more to it than we learned as we went on. But we stuck with a one-day summit initially because of various, things that were happening, projects that were going on. We just didn't have the bandwidth to really do more than one day. And we thought it was a really quick and easy way that we could kind of springboard us into that event. And going into this year, I actually considered doing like a 2-day event. And the team, I talked with the team here at Aweber, and the feedback was, if you think about the audience, they're probably not going to want to sit through 2 days worth of content. They, doing a one-day, multiple, 4 to 6 speakers, it's perfect amount of time and content to really give them, actionable tips that they could use. And so we made that decision again to stick with a one-day summit. And we did expand the number of speakers, obviously, but we kept it to one day because we wanted people to really have that one day to focus in, to learn these actionable, practical tips that they could apply to their podcasts. And so far we've seen some really great results, and the feedback that we're getting so far. So it's been really good.
Well, I can only imagine that it's going to be amazing results there. You guys put on everything you guys do is high quality and well run. So I'd like to actually look at the last summit, the first one you ran. Who did you have on the summit, and kind of how did you choose who you were going to have on there?
Yeah, a lot of deliberation there. So we wanted to make sure we had a variety of speakers and different sort of different achievement levels. So, you've got the huge podcasters out there. And we did have, John Lee Dumas, Amy Porterfield, 2 like the biggest podcasters out there that we know really well. But then we also had some sort of, individuals who maybe weren't as big and well known, like Mark Asquith and Jessica Kupferman. So we looked at sort of how large their audiences were, but we also looked at kind of what their areas of expertise and strengths were. Mark Asquith, for example, he's amazing at building community. Jessica Kupferman as well. Whereas, Amy Porterfield, she does amazing stuff with social media. So we talked about social media and podcasting and how you can use those 2 together. And then John Lee Dumas is just, he's just, huge and has a ton to offer, been doing his podcast for so long. So we looked at, influence and prominence, but also we wanted to make sure that they could speak on a variety of topics, a range of topics. So that was really important to us. We didn't want to just get headliner after headliner because, to be honest, they may not go as deep as, let's say, someone who's, Mark Asquith or Jess Kupferman, who can really kind of dive deeper into, topics like that. And then we approached it the same this year. So this year we went after a couple big names, like Kathy Heller, who's got the number 41 top business podcast out there on iTunes. Harry Duran, Dave Jackson, who's kind of the grandfather of podcasting, bringing back Mark Asquith because we felt an importance to kind of bring some continuity from last year to this year. So we brought back Mark again, who's a great customer, great advocate for us as well. Tracy DeForge, who's kind of she's focuses a lot on the research and the insights behind podcasting. And then lastly, Andrea Jones, who's like all about social media and how you can use social media to promote and really build your podcast. So we tried to also kind of replicate what we did last year this year by having a variety of topics, a variety of strengths, and also kind of sort of achievement levels. And we wanted to kind of that range because we wanted our listeners and our viewers to really feel like they could attain those things, right? It's hard to think, okay, I can't really be like John Lee Dumas, or how do I get there? But when you've got someone who's on their way up there, where it feels a little more real to be able to, okay, I can achieve that, and I can aspire to become like Kathy or some of these really big names, but at least give them some sort of milestones where they can kind of aspire to be. So not making it so lofty, but really making it a real attainable goal for them.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. We typically teach, it's good to have one or two of the bigger names to and also to solidify some of the other speakers. But a lot of the times those speakers, those experts that are still in the trenches, working hard, building their business, they've got the most, kind of up to date, best information. So I really like that. Now, yeah, when you were doing, like when you chose the topic, like the actual topic, because you could have gone almost anywhere with this, and it was especially even under the umbrella of podcasting, when you were choosing the topic, what were some of what was the process you went through to kind of narrow it down and kind of work us through that?
Yeah. So, high level, the topic is really kind of going beyond the podcast, learning how to do that in order to grow, in order to monetize your podcast. I think initially the first year, as we kind of brainstorm kind of what's our focus? What do we call this thing? Beyond the podcast kind of made sense for us because, we're an email marketing company. We're not a podcasting company. So we're teaching podcasters how they can use other tools like email marketing to go beyond the podcast, to deepen those relationships and to create other touch points with your listeners. So the name Beyond the Podcast made total sense. And we could, once we have that established, we can talk about, okay, you can use email marketing and podcasting to really deepen and build a stronger connection with your listeners. Because let's be honest, your podcast listeners are very passive. They're listening, they're consuming, they're enjoying it, but you really don't have a one-to-one relationship yet with them. You don't know who they are. They're kind of this faceless audience. And so, having a way to kind of build a new connection or a new touch point with them through email, through social media, allows you to deepen that connection with them, those relationships with them. So that's kind of how we began to think about that topic. Okay, we're talking about going beyond the podcast, why that's important to deepen those relationships and those connections, because ultimately, once you have that relationship with your listener at that level, then you can start, getting them to take action. Inviting them into your community, having them buy your products and services. So you've got to be able to build that connection and further that relationship. So that's kind of how we approached it. And last year, it was really more so about, building community, how to build ways, find ways to connect with your audience. This year, we kind of took a little different route, and we're focusing more on growing your podcast and monetizing your podcast. Yeah, we'll touch on connecting with your listeners and building relationships because that's a means to do that and a means to grow your podcast and monetize. But we wanted to be very specific and very, very upfront. Like, okay, you have a goal as a podcaster to grow and to make money. Like, let's be honest, you want to make money, whether it's through your podcast or whether it's, through your business in other ways. that's what you're in it for. And so we wanted to be very blatant about that. This is a podcast to help you grow and generate revenue. I think last year it wasn't as clear cut. It was about connecting and building relationships, and that's all important. But we wanted to really call out the fact that this is really about you growing and building revenue as a business. Thinking of yourself less as a podcaster and more as a business with a podcast that helps you reach your audience.
Yeah, and it's very common. The first summit is, a learning experience. We do it, we, get some success, we realize some things that we could have done better. We implement those changes and it continues to grow and get better. And we're going to dive into a couple of those questions here in a second. But I figure since we have, such a great email marketing mind here with us who has run a summit and with this topic of podcasting, a lot of the same touch points work as well for summit hosts. So based off of the last summit, your first summit that you ran, what were a couple of those kind of key fundamental takeaways from the summit that maybe some of our summit hosts could implement into their email marketing campaigns for their summits, or some of those strategies that maybe they could help use their summits to be more successful as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we thought, obviously, as an email marketing company, we thought through this and had a really strong strategy there. But someone signs up for your virtual summit, you can't just kind of not touch them again until the summit comes. You've got to have a really strong nurture sequence, follow-up emails to them to help keep them engaged, keep them coming back, to get them excited, get them pumped. So, it's really important to have that, and it doesn't have to be an automated series. You can have a single automated email that says, "Hey, thanks for signing up. Here's where to go to continue to get engaged." And in our example, we actually created a Facebook group where when you signed up for the summit, excuse me, you were able to join that Facebook group and start interacting with other attendees, registrants, even the hosts and the speakers as well. So we made that, we saw that as an important thing so that they could continue to get engaged in the content, get excited about it. So, your email strategy's got to keep them coming back. You can't just let them go. So have that single email that says, "Hey, welcome for signing up," and then have, multiple emails scheduled, leading up to the conference to get them engaged. Remind if you've got, new speakers to add or new sponsors that you want to highlight. Find new things that you can engage them with leading up to the conference or to the event, so that you don't lose that spark, that excitement that, when they first sign up, they're pumped. They want to get that content right away. So you got to keep that excitement going, keep them engaged. And then you also have to have a really strong follow-up sequence after that summit. So if your goal, like in our case, is to drive sales and to get people to sign up for whatever the service or the product that you have to have a really strong email game, with that audience. So your summit comes, it goes. What's your plan after that? You've got to have a strong, series of emails that's going to continue to engage them. And whether that's bringing them back to webinars or, bringing them into a community or, some other way, other content you might provide them, you've got to have those things planned out in advance. Otherwise, your summit just kind of it's a great event, but, it's not really going to produce results for your business. And that's why it's so important to, go into it with, a plan and figure out what is your goal. You got to start there. What's my goal with this summit? Is it just to be a thought leader? Is it to drive sales for my business? From there, that's going to dictate kind of how you approach your emails pre and post event, during event, and so on. One other thing I'll add too is that, even during an event, you can leverage email to get people coming back. So, they may have missed that first email saying, "Hey, we're going live tomorrow." But if you have a couple emails or, 2 or 3 emails set up to go out, right at the start or, halfway through it and maybe right before it ends, those who kind of missed that initial announcement or, for some reason didn't see it, they can continue to come back into that. And you can highlight, the different speakers that are happening at different times. We chose to kind of keep the fairly light during the conference. We have 2 emails, one at the beginning, one at halfway point. But that's important too, to get people coming into your summit who have registered.
Be sure to check out the speaker management tool inside your virtual summit software, which lets you quickly and easily recruit and manage your speakers on your virtual summit, literally eliminating hundreds of hours of work. Get more information at virtualsummits.com.
And that's so great. And I'm actually going to keep going deeper with you on this topic. Before I do, I just wanted to ask, was your Facebook group, was that a pop-up group, or did you have you let it keep going and are nurturing it and having ongoing communications, management, et cetera?
Yeah, it's remained there. So we've invited the people from this year into that group as well. And I'll be honest, I don't think we did a really good job of keeping that audience engaged. Last year when they first joined, it was a really engaged audience, and we didn't have a really strong plan to keep that community going. And so that's one thing that we learned from last year is to do a better job of have a plan to continue to engage that community throughout the year if you're using it for another summit coming up. So we didn't treat it as a pop-up, but we kept it open, kept it going. Definitely not as engaged as it should have been. And so this time around, we're actually developing a different approach to keeping that community engaged throughout the year. With new content, it could be Facebook Lives with members of the community, or if we want to bring in some of the past speakers or other experts into the group to have some dialogue and provide additional content and training and education for them. So yeah, if you do, I guess for those listening, if you're doing a virtual summit, you decide you want a Facebook group and you want to keep that going, just make sure you have a plan to keep them engaged. Otherwise, it kind of goes cold and it's hard to re-engage them and reignite them. So.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, either way is great. If you want to do a pop-up group just for the summit, I mean, we do so many summits over here that a lot of times it's clear this is a pop-up for the summit. And then afterwards it's still there, but we don't monitor it or regulate or anything after that. And then we have our bigger summits, which are annual, that we keep going. And I agree completely with you, Brandon. Make sure you map out some kind of a plan. It doesn't have to be super intense. Like Brandon was just saying there, throw in some Facebook Lives, bring some people, get the community engaged. Now, what I'd like to ask with this summit, because you're in the process of having this summit go out and it's more on the monetization aspect, what were some of those? And again, because there's a huge crossover between podcasters and summit hosts like myself, I'm both. So what is maybe one or two of those monetization tips you can give us a little taster of the summit that summit hosts could use with their email marketing campaigns?
Yeah. So I think with podcasters, there's a lot of ways that you can monetize. Obviously, the ways that most podcasters think is Patreon, just getting donations from your listeners. But really, it comes down to having something to sell, to offer them, whether that's a product or a service. And you can, if you don't know what those products are, those services are, so put some thought into that. It doesn't have to require a ton of time. You can be an affiliate, for example, and sell affiliate programs and get affiliate commissions that way. But you can also take your existing content and package it into a product and sell that to your audience. Memberships are also another great thing. So a lot of podcasters will create sort of memberships and invite their listeners into that to become a member to get exclusive content, bonus episodes, things of that nature. So there's a lot of ways you can go with productizing or monetizing your podcast, but really comes down to having something that you can sell, whether that's a product or a service that would, that your listeners would really find value in. And like I said, a lot of businesses, podcasters included, they think of that and it kind of overwhelms them. They think, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to offer a product. It's going to take me months to create a product. It really doesn't have to be that difficult. You can package a lot of the stuff that you've already created into a different format and offer that as a product and kind of see how that goes. You shouldn't spend months and months and months developing a product. Get something out there, test it out, see what people are if they're going to react to those things, and then adjust. Get something out there though, because otherwise you're going to go months and months creating a product and you don't really know if it's going to have legs. So get something small out there, see how your audience reacts to it. And if they love it, then you can keep going down that road and build bigger products and build bigger programs around it.
Yeah, you've just mentioned several like amazing gems here. So I want to unpackage those a little bit for our listeners. Like, again, we talk a lot about the post-summit profit strategy. It's one of the biggest mistakes summit hosts make, is not having anything to go to after that. But you've also identified that some summit hosts or some entrepreneurs in general will spend months and months creating a course or a program and not have an audience to sell it to. So I'm a big firm believer that the audience you can generate from the summit, but then you can use the summit, like you were just saying, Brandon, to package something together to sell. We talk about how you can actually take your summit, use the outline of the summit to create a course and almost repackage the information. Of course, not using the exact stuff from the summit. Or we actually have one of our frameworks with our one-day summit is how you can use a one-day summit to generate a specific audience to then direct towards affiliate traffic. So without creating any product. So I just wanted to reiterate what Brandon was saying here, because there's so many ways that you can monetize from a summit, either before and or after. So this is great. Like, let's keep going in this area with the, since we have, Aweber represented right here. What are some, and honestly, Brandon, I probably get, if not daily, at least multiple times a week, emails from aspiring summit hosts say, hey, Mark, can I see your summit email copy? Can I see, what are you putting out there with your email? So since we have you here, can you give us some email no-nos? Like, so make sure you're not doing this or this in your email, just to kind of help us avoid some failures.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, number one, you got to make sure that, and we sometimes do this, we don't see this a lot, but you mentioned kind of bait and switch earlier on, but be careful not to do that with your emails. What you promise somebody in a subject line, make sure that that's that's what you're delivering. Excuse me. So that's really important. Make sure you're real clear and straightforward with your emails. Nobody likes big, long blocks of text, that are hard to read, that hard to skim. People like short, easy to read emails, and so get to the point really quickly. And it's hard to say, because the normal answer is it depends. But generally speaking, people like to get to the point. They like to know what it is you're trying to tell them and what it is they want you to do. So try and get to the point quickly. If you can do that without having to go through a big long story or narrative, that's the best way to do it. But if it's a brand new audience and you really kind of have to sell them on the idea or sell them on the value there, then it might take a little bit longer to kind of get to that point. But if they know you, they know what you're all about, they know what you offer, get to that point real quickly, because if it's a strong community that you have, they're gonna react. As soon as you say, I want you to do this, they're gonna go do it. But if it's a community that you've got to kind of warm up and engage, you've got to spell that value out for them. Really highlight those pain points that they're struggling with, their challenges, and how this summit or how this podcast or how this webinar or whatever it is that you're doing is going to help them solve that problem and be valuable to them. So really spell out that pain point. I mean, I was listening to a podcast that Pat Flynn and Michael Stelzner were having the other day, and Pat was talking about his new book. And the way that he comes up with the titles for his book is really he asks his customers, what are you struggling with? What's your challenge? And then he restates that right in the title. So people, they know what their struggles are, and you just have to understand what those are and reiterate back to them that I know this is what you're struggling with, and this product or this service or this summit or this podcast is centered or aimed at helping you achieve that or helping you solve that. So getting back to your question about emails, I kind of went on a tangent there. With emails, your emails need to spell that out. What is it that you're trying to do? What value are you going to provide them? And why should they care? Those are a couple ideas on what you can do with your emails. And as far as no-nos, there's a number of words that you should kind of avoid, that would put you in the spam filter, things like, cheap and free and money and dollar signs and things of that nature. But really kind of focus in on what the value is for your listener or your watcher.
Wow, that is such Great information. And I need to go back to my email marketing campaigns and probably do a little, some updates on that as well. So as we start to round out this episode here, Brandon, I'd like to ask a couple specific questions on your past summit. Were there any kind of success tips, things that after you've gone through it, you look back on it and you're like, okay, I need to make sure we do that again or more of that? Are there any of those that we can tell our listeners?
Yeah. So let me think here. Reflecting back on last year, I think a lot of the things we carried over into this year were things that we learned that were successful. Obviously, the one-day summit worked really well, so we stuck with the one-day summit. Having a small amount of speakers, not like 10, 12 speakers, we felt that was really valuable because it was enough information, sort of concentrated, that allowed our listeners to really get a lot out of it in a short amount of time. So keep it succinct. I think making sure. So we used YouTube Live last time, and I had not actually heard about your software, so I'm going to check out your software as well. But we used YouTube Live because it was easy. It was something we could get up and running really quickly. And so we went that route. And so that was something that we did again this year because it was easy lift. We didn't have to do a whole lot with that. We also used Facebook ads last year to kind of reach a broader podcast audience. And we're doing that again this year, but we learned that our targeting was a little off. And so we refined that a little bit better, and we're seeing much better results as a result of that. So we stuck with Facebook ads. Obviously our email strategy is there. We kept that going. I think we did adjust some things with our email strategy. Last year, we did a lot more emails. This year, we didn't do as many emails leading up to the event, but we're going to have a much different post-event email strategy than we did last year. Last year, we didn't do a whole lot. We did a few touch points after the event leading up to podcast movement. But this year, we're going to be doing a lot more post-event to keep them engaged and to try and get them in as a trial user of Aweber.
With the Ever Summit feature inside the Virtual Summit software, you can rerun your summit as if it were live, ongoing forever with one click of a button. This now lets you continue to use your summit forever, bringing in qualified and engaged leads every month into your business. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
That right there, you just kind of surmounted all of it together. So I'm going to go from the other side at this point, because most of our summit hosts, they jump in, aspiring summit hosts. They've got a lot of ambition, excitement, motivation. And sometimes we're a little naive. I say most of the most successful things I've done, if I would have known how difficult it was before I did it, I would have never done it. So sometimes being a little naive is good. But what were maybe some of those one or two just unexpected challenges that you did not foresee that we can pass over to our summit hosts, maybe help get them a little bit more prepared?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we didn't foresee was really the technical side of producing the summit. So we did all ours pre-recorded interviews with our guests. And we did kind of portray it as a live summit on the day of the summit, but we did it all pre-recorded. And we were surprised by some of the technical challenges. I think, we used Zoom to do our recordings, and, I don't think we had upgraded the account. And so like 45 minutes hit and we're like, oh no, a little warning sign says, your call's going to end soon. So, that was something we changed, really quickly right after that. So just make sure you kind of do your due diligence to know the technical requirements behind the interviews that you're doing. We actually went through and mapped out, okay, here's like a checklist of the things we need to make sure are on, or settings are this, and so on and so forth, so that we knew exactly what we should be doing, and tried to avoid as many surprises as we could, even though we did get a couple surprises in the actual moment. So that was, probably more so on the technical side, just kind of understanding what that is. We did have some sponsors too last year. We had 3 sponsors. This year we've got, I think, 8. And last year, I think what we learned with sponsors, you can get people in, and they're free sponsorships. Like they were in kind, so we didn't charge anybody for sponsors. And we did the same thing this year, just in kind, because we want them to really promote. And we didn't do a good job of really engaging our sponsors the first year and getting them helping promote the event. This year, we took a little different approach with that and really got very specific on what we wanted them to do and what we expected them to do. And in turn, what we would be offering them as a sponsor and how we could incorporate them into the content and into the summit. So that was a thing, an oversight, I think, the last year is like figuring out how can we really, leverage the sponsors in a better way and also give them, value in being a sponsor. They're you're doing a favor, getting the word out about the summit. What can we do to really kind of return that favor, provide them some value as well? So that was something that kind of caught us off guard a little bit last year. And this year, we took a different approach with that.
And I think those are all very common challenges that most of us experience. I mean, that's one of the whole reasons the Virtual Summit software was invented. And I've got my little pre-interview checklist right here, as you were just talking about. So I totally feel you on each of those and all of those. And those are great insights for all of our summit hosts listening in right now. Hopefully you wrote those down or go back and re-listen to this episode so you make sure you avoid those aspects and you can have the same kind of success that Brandon and Aweber had. Brandon, I just have to say thank you again for your time, your energy, your insights and wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here with us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark.
Absolutely. So thanks again, Brandon. Thanks, Aweber. Love the one-day summit you guys are running. And thank you to all you summit hosts for spending this time with me and Brandon. I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software. And just remember, your message matters. Make sure you head over to the show notes over at podcast.virtualsummits.com/068 so you can get links to Brandon's summit and all the other amazing resources like Aweber that we've been talking about. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.